My mom's fraud blew up at the wedding ceremony. Emotional manipulation tore the family apart in front of everyone. I don't even know how to start this without sounding like the worst child alive, but my mom, Scarlett 37F, absolutely ruined my cousin Emily's wedding last month. And not an idiots. Spilled red wine on the dress way now. I'm talking full-on fraud and emotional manipulation right in the middle of the ceremony. To back up a little, Scarlett has always been dramatic. She thrives on being the centre of attention. Birthdays. She'd make it about herself. Holidays. Somehow she's the victim if she doesn't get her way. But weddings. Those are her Super Bowl. My aunt, her sister, has joked for years that Scarlett can't stand to see someone else happy in a big white dress. Anyway, my cousin Emily 28F was finally marrying her fiancé Daniel 30M. Everyone loved Daniel, solid guy, family-oriented, definitely not flashy. The wedding was set in this beautiful venue just outside of town, very rustic and classy. Emily wanted low drama, intimate vibes. Obviously, that was too much to hope for with my mom around. In the weeks leading up, Scarlett started making weird comments to me. You know, Emily is so lucky Daniel overlooks her past mistakes, not everyone would be so forgiving. Some people just hide things really well, I guess some of us are just better at putting on a show. I brushed it off as typical Scarlett passive aggressiveness. But then she asked me if I thought Emily and Daniel had signed the prenup yet. I told her it wasn't my business, and honestly, I didn't care. That's when she smirked and said, well, it'll be everyone's business soon. That should have been my warning sign. Fast forward to the ceremony. We're all seated, the bride looks gorgeous walking down the aisle. Daniel is practically crying. It's perfect. Then right as the officiant says, if anyone has just cause why these two should not be joined, and my mom stands up. My heart literally dropped into my stomach. Actually, I do, Scarlett said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Emily froze. Daniel looked confused. The officiant tried to brush it off like it was a joke, but my mom pulled out a folder from her purse like she was presenting evidence in a courtroom. I have here proof that Emily has been committing financial fraud under Daniel's name for months. Asks. I swear half the guests thought it was a prank. But my mom was dead serious. She started waving around bank statements and receipts. The groom's family looked horrified. Emily started sobbing, saying it wasn't true, that Scarlett had forged them. And here's the kicker, my mom had. She'd taken old documents, doctored them on her computer, and printed them to look official. I didn't know this at the time, but later on, I'd find out she did it all because Emily once got an inheritance that Scarlett thought she deserved more. This was her revenge, dressed up as protecting Daniel. The chaos that followed was unreal. The vineyard turned into a courtroom in seconds. Half the guests were whispering. Others were staring at Scarlett like she'd lost her mind. Emily was sobbing into her bouquet while Daniel just stood there, pale and stiff, clutching the folder my mom had shoved into his hands. I wanted to sink into the floor. I muttered, Mom, what the hell are you doing? But she ignored me, her eyes laser focused on Daniel like she was the hero in some dramatic movie reveal. Daniel, she said, voice trembling but loud enough for everyone, I didn't want to do this, but you deserve to know the truth before you tie yourself to a liar. Emily shouted, she's lying. Scarlett, why are you doing this? Her voice cracked, mascara streaking down her face. Daniel stammered, is this real? And my mom hit him with a killer line, you've always trusted me, haven't you? I wouldn't lie about something this serious. That's when I realized she wasn't just pulling out fake documents, she was pulling out years of emotional manipulation. Scarlett had this weird bond with Daniel ever since he started dating Emily. She'd always treated him like a son she never had, complimenting him constantly, cooking his favourite meals, even giving him unsolicited relationship advice. And Daniel, bless him, is too nice to set boundaries. Now she was using all of that goodwill to sell her fraud. The officiant was flustered, trying to regain control. Perhaps we should step aside and handle this privately. But my mom snapped back. Privately, no, this man deserves witnesses to the truth before he makes the biggest mistake of his life. My uncle Mark, Emily's dad, finally stormed up. He's usually pretty calm, but he was red in the face. Scarlett, enough you're humiliating Emily on her wedding day, give me those papers. My mom clutched the folder to her chest like it was a baby. Of course you'd defend her, she's your daughter, but this is about honesty. Emily was hysterical at this point. She grabbed Daniel's arm, begging, please don't believe her, she's forging this, she's obsessed with ruining things. And that's when my grandma of all people stood up. She's 76, usually quiet, but her voice cut through the chaos. Scarlett, sit down, now. Everyone froze. Even my mom looked rattled for a second. But then she switched gears, classic Scarlett move. Her eyes welled up and she whispered, why is everyone against me? I'm just trying to protect him and nobody ever appreciates me. Then, the manipulation pivot. Suddenly, a few of the older relatives looked uncertain, murmuring things like, maybe Scarlett just got confused or she must have had a reason. She was reeling people back in with pity, right after trying to blow up the wedding. Daniel looked completely torn. He kept flipping through that evidence with shaking hands while Emily was crying that it was fake. I felt this pit in my stomach because if you believe my mom even a little, this wedding was about to end before it started. That's when my Aunt Lady, Scarlett's sister, marched up and said, I've had enough of this, sir. Scarlett, if you don't hand those papers over right now, I'll drag you out myself. Scarlett gasped like she was the victim of some assault, clutching the folder tighter. You'd hurt me on your niece's wedding day after all our sacrificed for this family? The manipulation was so thick in the air you could choke on it. And then Daniel said the words that made my heart drop. Maybe we should pause the ceremony. After Daniel said, maybe we should pause the ceremony, there was a heavy silence. The guests exchanged awkward glances, some frowning, some whispering nervously. Emily sank into a chair, hugging herself like she was trying to disappear. I could see her whole dream wedding collapsing before her eyes. The officiant cleared his throat and muttered something about taking a short break. Daniel, still pale as a sheet, took Scarlett aside near the edge of the vineyard. I followed quietly, my stomach in knots. Mom, Daniel said, his voice tight but controlled. What the hell is this? These papers, this is crazy. Scarlett, holding the folder protectively, tilted her head and gave him this pleading look. Daniel, I wouldn't lie to you. You have to know the truth. She's been hiding things, serious things. You deserve to know before it's too late. I almost laughed in disbelief. Mom, she's literally making this up. I whispered under my breath, but Scarlett glared at me. Daniel looked torn. I don't know what to believe. Why are you doing this, Scarlett? What do you gain? Scarlett's voice shook, but she still tried to look righteous. Ain, I just can't stand to see someone get hurt. Emily has always had everything handed to her, and Daniel, I've cared about you since you started dating her. You need to know the truth. Scarlett, Daniel said, his voice rising with frustration. I trust you as family, but you've crossed a line. You're sabotaging my wedding. This isn't protection, it's manipulation. You're lying. Scarlett's eyes welled up, but instead of shame, it was that classic guilt-inducing look she always uses. You think I'm lying? Everyone thinks I'm lying, nobody appreciates me. I just wanted to help. I could see Daniel's face falter for a moment. He's too kind-hearted and always wants to see the good in people. I almost screamed at him. Don't fall for it. At that moment, my Uncle Mark and Aunt Lydia arrived. Daniel, we'll handle this, Lydia said firmly, stepping between Scarlett and him. Mark grabbed the folder from her hands. Daniel looked relieved, and Scarlett instantly switched tactics. She began crying louder, clutching Mark's arm. You're all against me. I just wanted to do the right thing. Scarlett, Lydia snapped. You fabricated evidence. You tried to ruin a wedding. You manipulated everyone emotionally. There is no right thing in this. Step back. That hit her like a punch. For a few seconds, Scarlett's confident facade faltered. She looked around at the group, her daughter Emily crying, her brother shaking his head, Daniel glaring, and I realised, for the first time, she actually seemed scared. Mark held the fake documents up. I'll be honest, I was worried there for a second, but I checked them, forged, completely fake. Scarlett's lips trembled. I didn't mean to. Emily stood up, tears streaming down her face. I can't believe you, Mom. Why would you do this to me on my wedding day? That's when Scarlett started muttering something about how she was unappreciated and always the one who cares, but her voice was weaker now. Daniel shook his head and said firmly, We're continuing the ceremony, but only because Emily wants to. Scarlett, you're out of line. If you can't respect that, you need to leave. Scarlett stared at him for a long moment, then, finally, nodded shakily. She left the vineyard without a word, clutching her empty purse like a shield. Family started regrouping, whispers buzzing like bees. Emily hugged Daniel tightly, and I could see relief on her face, but the emotional scars were already there. The ceremony resumed, but the atmosphere was off. The vineyard still looked beautiful, the sun glinting off the grapevines, the soft hum of a string quartet, but it felt like a fragile glass bubble, ready to shatter with the slightest touch. Emily's dress still sparkled, but her smile was tight forced. Daniel squeezed her hand reassuringly, but I could see the tension radiating from him. Scarlett didn't leave entirely. She hovered near the edge of the vineyard, sitting on a bench by herself, muttering to anyone who would listen. At first, she whispered to a few distant relatives. I just wanted to warn Daniel, you don't understand. When no one gave her the attention she craved, she started dropping hints to random guests about Emily's secret financial mistakes or dishonest past. Some older relatives raised eyebrows, unsure if she was telling the truth, while others just rolled their eyes. I caught my cousin Alex, Emily's brother, glaring at her. Scarlett, stop, you're embarrassing yourself and Emily. She flashed him a sad smile. I care about the truth. Don't you want what's best for everyone? I wanted to scream. You already destroyed the moment, Mom. Just sit down. Meanwhile, Emily and Daniel tried to focus on their vows. Emily's voice wavered, but she pushed through. Daniel looked at her like he was seeing her strength for the first time. Guests were supportive, murmuring encouragement. My Aunt Lydia whispered to me, Scarlett thinks she can control the narrative, but Emily is stronger than she realises. Scarlett noticed people ignoring her and shifted tactics again. She started approaching Daniel's uncle, subtly questioning if he really knew what Emily had been hiding, using her usual blend of pity and insinuation. Daniel's uncle, a man in his 60s, looked uncomfortable and finally said, Scarlett, we've heard enough. This only seemed to fuel her. Scarlett began walking closer to the altar during the exchange of rings, whispering things like, Are you sure you want to do this? Daniel ignored her, keeping his focus on Emily, but I could see him struggling to maintain patience. Finally, my mum tried to involve me directly. She leaned over and whispered in my ear, You understand why I had to do this, don't you? She's not who you think she is. I snapped. No, Mom, I understand that you're trying to ruin everything. Leave it alone. She recoiled like I had slapped her. Her jaw tightened, eyes welling, and she muttered something about being unappreciated again before retreating to the far side of the vineyard. By the time the ceremony officially ended and they exchanged their first kiss as husband and wife, the mood had shifted from pure joy to cautious relief. Guests were polite, congratulating Emily and Daniel, but you could sense everyone's tension, the emotional residue Scarlett had left. After the ceremony at the reception, some guests whispered about what had happened, some tried to brush it off, and a few approached Daniel privately to reassure him that Scarlett's claims were baseless. Emily was emotionally exhausted, clinging to her bouquet, but at least she had survived her mother's sabotage. Scarlett, meanwhile, sat at a corner table, arms crossed, fuming silently, muttering about how no one appreciates her sacrifices. The subtle manipulation lingered even after the documents had been proven fake. Some relatives quietly wondered if there was some truth behind her claims, and that was exactly what Scarlett wanted. I realised then that dealing with Scarlett was never just about fact. It was about navigating a minefield of emotions, guilt and perception, and she was a master at it. The reception was tense. Normally, everyone would be laughing, cursing, and dancing by this point, but the air was thick with suspicion and unease. Guests whispered in small clusters, glancing towards Scarlett every few minutes. She sat stiffly at a corner table, arms folded, eyes darting around as if daring someone to confront her again. Emily tried to salvage the night, greeting relatives and smiling for photos, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. Her wedding day, the one she dreamed about for years, had been hijacked by my mom's lies and manipulation. Daniel, on the other hand, was surprisingly calm. He had spent some time earlier with his parents and Emily's family, going through the forged documents and proving they were fake. That helped him regain confidence, but I could see the lingering doubt in some relatives. A few of Daniel's distant cousins even whispered, maybe she wasn't lying completely, exactly the kind of seed Scarlett wanted planted. At one point, I caught Scarlett cornering my Aunt Lydia near the buffet. You think you understand, Lydia, she hissed, but Emily's hiding things. I just want Daniel to know. You'll see one day. You'll thank me. Lydia's face went stone cold. Scarlett, enough. You are done here. You will not ruin Emily's wedding any further. Scarlett's eyes welled up again, but this time her tactic shifted subtly. She started making the rounds, whispering in sympathetic turns to the older guests, reminding them of how unappreciated she was and how she had to sacrifice so much for the family over the years. A few nodded politely, guilt creeping in. Meanwhile, Emily confided in me, her voice shaking. I don't know if I can ever trust her again. How could she do this to me on my wedding day? I hugged her tightly. It's not your fault. She thrives on control and attention. This doesn't define your life or your marriage. But the damage was already done. Even Daniel, who had handled the confrontation well, was frustrated. I can't believe someone would go this far. I mean, she engineered a public spectacle just to hurt you. Emily shook her head. I know, and it's my own mother. How do you process that? Later, during the speeches, a few relatives subtly referenced the incident without naming names. Some tried to turn it into a lesson about honesty, but everyone knew the tension behind the words. My mom didn't take the subtle criticism lightly. Her icy glaze sliced across the room every time she thought someone was against her. By the end of the night, Emily and Daniel decided to leave early, skipping the last few dances. Guests understood and quietly offered hugs as they departed. Scarlett, of course, lingered behind, murmuring about how nobody appreciates the truth, while I stayed back, stewing in anger and disbelief at the emotional manipulation she'd wielded. That night, after everyone left, Emily collapsed on the couch. I wanted my wedding to be perfect. How could she ruin something so special? I put my arm around her. Scarlett isn't about perfection, she's about control, and control is all she ever cares about. You can't let her steal your joy. But even as I said it, I knew the shadow Scarlett cast would linger in the family for months, maybe years. The next morning, the fallout began in earnest. Word about Scarlett's stunt had spread through the family like wildfire, and the reactions were brutal. My Aunt Lydia called a family meeting at her house. Emily and Daniel stayed home, still emotionally drained from the previous day. Scarlett, of course, arrived late, looking as if she'd been wronged rather than exposing herself. Why are we even here? Scarlett asked, arms crossed. Everyone just wants to gang up on me because I speak the truth. Lady didn't even flinch. Scarlett, this isn't about truth. You fabricated documents, humiliated Emily and Daniel, and tried to manipulate everyone emotionally. That's not truth, that's fraud and abuse. Scarlett gasped. Fraud? I was protecting him. Protecting Daniel from her lies. Mark, Emily's dad, slammed his hand on the table. Enough, you've gone too far. This isn't just about a wedding, it's about trust. You broke it, not just with Emily and Daniel, but with the whole family. Scarlett's defenses went into overdrive. She tried to turn the blame, pointing fingers at me, and you just sat there and watched, letting them destroy what could have been a happy day. I was done. Mom, you destroyed it. Don't try to twist it around on me. Everyone knows what you did. You're the one who forged evidence and manipulated everyone. For the first time, Scarlett looked cornered. Her lips quivered, but she had no clever pivot, no emotional trap to spring. She sputtered. I wanted to be appreciated. Lydia cut in sharply. Appreciation doesn't give you the right to lie, to ruin lives, or commit fraud. You need to own your actions, and you need to apologize to Emily and Daniel. Scarlett hesitated. You could see the gears turning in her head. She wanted to craft some dramatic apology that still made her the victim, but she couldn't. Finally, in a voice that was more muttering than speaking, she said, I guess I went too far. Guess? Lydia's voice was deadly calm. You need to make amends. Full stop. Mark added, no one trusts you right now, Scarlett. That's on you. You need to earn it back, if you ever can. And that's when reality really hit Scarlett. For the first time in a long while, her emotional manipulation failed. She didn't have a single ally in the room. No one was buying her guilt trip pity act. Over the next few days, Emily and Daniel slowly rebuilt their trust and began celebrating privately, ignoring Scarlett's calls and texts. Scarlett tried to reach out, claiming she only wanted to protect them, but her words fell flat. The family largely sided with Emily, and even distant relatives who had initially questioned her motives realized the documents were forged. By the end of the week, Scarlett had to face the consequences of her actions. Her reputation took a massive hit within the family. Invitations to family events were limited, her access to family funds and sensitive discussions became restricted, and her constant emotional manipulation was actively monitored by relatives. Scarlett wasn't exiled, but she was firmly put in check. The trust she once had evaporated, leaving her isolated, which was ironic because that's exactly what she had tried to prevent by sabotaging Emily's happiness. And for Emily and Daniel, they finally felt a sense of relief. The wedding chaos had left scars, but it also strengthened their bond. They realized that love, when anchored in trust, could survive even the worst family drama. By the time a week had passed since the wedding, the family had slowly started to return to some semblance of normalcy, but Scarlett was noticeably absent from the celebrations and casual get-togethers. She wasn't pan, but everyone had learned to be cautious. Conversations were carefully moderated, and no one allowed her to monopolize attention or plant seeds of doubt. Emily and Daniel, on the other hand, were thriving. They spent quiet evenings recounting the wedding day with you instead of dread. Daniel even joked, at least we know who not to trust with secrets, making Emily laugh so hard she nearly cried. Despite the trauma, their bond had grown stronger. They'd survived the perfect storm together. Scarlett, meanwhile, oscillated between frustration and self-pity. She sent occasional texts, carefully phrased to sound apologetic but loaded with guilt. I just wanted to protect you both. You'll understand someday. I'm always here if you need me. Emily ignored them. I saw the text too, and felt the mixture of anger and pity. Scarlett's need for control was relentless, but for once, it was being met with boundaries. She couldn't manipulate or intimidate anyone anymore. She was left with her own isolation. A month later, there was a small family dinner. Everyone was present except Scarlett. Lydia mentioned her absence matter-of-factly. Scarlett isn't coming tonight. Maybe she's reflecting on her actions. Mark grunted. Or she's plotting the next disaster. We all laughed quietly, but I noticed that the laughter didn't mask the lingering tension. Even months later, no one really forgot the wedding debacle. Scarlett had managed to leave a mark, emotional scars, lessons learned, and a stark reminder that her manipulations could no longer go unchecked. Emily confided in me later, even though everything went wrong, I feel stronger. I can't believe my mom did that, but surviving it makes me appreciate what we have even more. Daniel nodded. It was ugly, but it exposed the truth. We know who we can trust, and honestly, It's made us better as a team. Scarlett eventually reached out again, this time with a phone call. Daniel answered reluctantly. Hi, Scarlett, he said cautiously. Daniel, I just wanted to say I'm sorry, she began. Her voice wavered, more genuine than before. No lectures, no documents, no emotional traps. Emily wasn't on the call. I could hear the hesitation in Daniel's voice, the measured tone that said, I hear you, but I'm not vulnerable to manipulation anymore. Thank you, he replied, carefully. We'll see where things go from here. It was lukewarm, but that was the point. Scarlett had learned, at least partially, that her usual tactics didn't work anymore. She still sought approval, still wanted attention, but she had no choice now but to navigate the family differently. As for the rest of us, life moved on. The wedding was still celebrated, photographs were taken, laughter returned to family gatherings, and Scarlett, well, she became more of a spectator than a player. Emotional manipulation no longer gave her power, it only reminded her how far she had overstepped. In the end, Emily and Daniel's love survived, strengthened by adversity, while Scarlett learned, albeit painfully, that her control over others had limits. The wedding would always be remembered, not just for the joy it was supposed to bring, but for the lesson in resilience, boundaries, and the dangerous allure of manipulation.